Jim Trotter, the NFL media, reported that the NFL had a proposal on the table that was going to be voted on Tuesday that would say if a team hires a minority coach or a minority general manager, they can move up in the draft, assuming that he's still hired on the staff. So let's say if you hire a minority head coach to fill your opening, if he's there going into his second year, your team can move up 6 slots in the third round. So let's say if you have the number 6 pick in the third round, guess what? If you have a minority coach and he's still there after 1 year, you can move up to get the first pick in the third round. If you have a minority general manager, you can move up 10 selections in the third round. And if you hit you go the double dip, if you go both a minority head coach and general manager, you can move up 16 spots in the draft in 1 year. And again, there's some incentives as well as to, trying to hire minority coaches. And while the application, I didn't get to this, but while the application I didn't think was smart enough, I mean, this is a real problem that has to be addressed. And I appreciate and applaud the NFL for at least trying to take steps in order to address this. But to me now, thinking about this, seeing that, the proposal was tabled so the owners even get to vote upon it, so it's not going to be instituted this year. And Roger Goodell said in tabling it that they're trying to, this was basically a start, right? This is the first idea, and he thinks that by tabling it, they'll have some other ideas that can improve this rule, while maybe, not making it have such a major impact competitively. Like, again, moving up 16 spots in a draft is major. But, have some different, let's say, rewards for going and promoting diversity. And kind of, reading a lot, listening a lot, my main takeaway is that the NFL does have a huge disparity and a major lack of diversity. But even more than that, the NFL needs, they lack open-mindedness more than anything else. They need more open-mindedness when it comes to head coaches, when it comes to general managers, when it comes to ownership. Open-mindedness is lacking more than diversity. Here's what I mean by that. So, you can do whatever you want. The Rooney Rule was implemented back in 2003, and that rule states that if you have a head coaching opening, you have to interview at least one minority candidate. Before, there's no rule, so you could interview whoever you want. Now you can still hire whoever you want, but you have to make sure that in doing so, a minority coach is in the process. That was implemented back in 2003. 17 years later, guess what? Nothing really has changed. It's helped a little bit. The Steelers obviously benefited from it in hiring Mike Tomlin, a coach that they said that they never would have thought, or at least been would have interviewed, besides this rule. So, sure, it's helped in 1 or 2 cases, but as you can see, there's still a major problem here. And this latest proposal of incentivizing minority hires, sure, again, it's another step. It's a little bit more of extreme of a step, but how much could it really help? Because guess what? At the end of the day, you can't force general managers to hire a head coach they don't want to hire. You can't force owners to hire either a general manager or a head coach they don't want to hire. And if they're not comfortable with hiring someone, they're not going to do it. So if teams want to hire diverse candidates, they'll do so. If they don't want to, they'll skirt the rules. They'll do whatever they have to do to make sure they're being quote unquote compliant. They're not going to hire a minority coach if they don't want to. Because guess what? It doesn't take diversity in order to promote open-mindedness, in order to promote diversity. And here's what I mean by that. There are plenty of examples already of teams who are open-minded, that want to be open-minded, that have already promoted diversity. You had the 49ers hire Katie Sowers, the first full-time offensive woman assistant. Right? She was profiled greatly leading up to the Super Bowl, and you hope that her hiring and her success with the 49ers opens doors for other women. The Redskins just this past offseason hired Jennifer King. She's the first minority female to be hired full-time on staff. Congrats to the Redskins for doing so. Bruce Arians has been really one of the leaders in promoting diversity and opening doors and using his open-mindedness to hire the best candidate no matter who they are. He has Byron Leftwich as his offensive coordinator, Todd Bowles as his defensive coordinator, and he's already hired 2 full-time female coaches. So Bruce Arians is a great example of someone who he's going to hire the best candidate. Doesn't matter where they come from, who they are, what their experience is. If their qualifications match up, he's going to hire them. And I want to read a quote from Bruce Arians, because I think this is perfect, and this really sums up. This was him talking last March, so back in March 2019, when the news of him hiring the 2 female coaches came out. He said, quote, "It's time, and I'll be happy when it's not news anymore. That's where it should be heading. That's what we need. The fact that their gender is different, who gives a bleep?" End quote. I mean, Bruce sums it up perfectly. It doesn't matter, the background, the gender, the race that they come from. These owners, these general managers, these coaches should be hired on their merit and should be hired because they're the best fit. Guess what? Teams that want to promote this already are doing so. Teams that aren't going to do so. If you have teams that are uncomfortable in hiring a minority candidate as a head coach, as an assistant coach, as a general manager, guess what? No matter what rule you put in there, no matter how much incentives you give them to hire someone from a different background, if they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to do it. So guess what? These hires, unfortunately, are only going to be limited to those who think outside the box, which, if you look at the NFL generally, it's rare. Think about it. How rare is it that we see teams, organizations, coaches, players, general managers really go outside the box, really go down the road less traveled? So many teams are afraid to take a risk. So many teams rarely go out on a limb. I mean, it really is a copycat league. If you just look at it from strictly an X's and O's perspective, right? Now, you have the proliferation and you have the quarterback position alone changed so vastly, so differently from even 10 years ago, to where you, for the longest time, had a pro-style quarterback. That was someone who was big, who was tall, that could go under center, that could make all the throws you want. He wasn't someone that came from the Big 12. He wasn't someone that was small, that was athletic, that was fast, that relied on their legs in order to make plays. That, for the longest time, wasn't going to work in the NFL. Well, guess what? Teams started realizing, eventually, once they saw it happen, that, hey, you know what? We can win games when our quarterback is fast. We can win games when our quarterback uses his legs. We can win games when we are strictly out of the shotgun. And now what's happening? You see more and more teams drafting these kind of spread offense, athletic quarterbacks to be their guys. Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. And you are starting to see it more and more often now, where the prototype of a quarterback is basically the best athlete. Strong arm, mobile, can run the ball, athletic out of the pocket, primarily out of the shotgun. Now it's what all teams are looking for. And this is the same thing with coaches. Right? For the long time, you see Sean McVay get hired. He has success with the Rams. A lot of people scoff at it. All of a sudden, now what happens? Everyone tries to look for the Sean McVay clone. Who's the young, hotshot offensive assistant? Who can we get that mirrors Sean McVay? How can we be like the Rams and do what they did? So one team in the Rams steps out, goes on a limb, hires a young guy who's, 32 at the time of Sean McVay's hiring. And now all of a sudden, with that little experience, he takes the Rams, turns them into an offensive juggernaut. And now all of a sudden teams are desperate, whether they're hiring his quarterback coaches, his offensive coaches, and now the main prerequisite for a head coaching job is, what have you done on offense? Are you a quarterback coach, offensive coordinator? How young are you? We need to get the next young hotshot. But guess what? When teams pigeonhole themselves into thinking like this or checking some sort of box where, okay, the league is going this way, so we have to make sure that we have a guy who fits this. When teams do that, they rarely find success. I'm going to read you a few names here. Tell me one category that these all fit in. You have Pete Carroll, John Harbaugh, Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, Tony Dungy. You know what all these guys have in common? They are all from the defensive side or special team side of the ball. And you know what they all were? The best candidate for the job. Didn't matter, what side of the ball they coached. Didn't matter what race they were or what teams they coached before. They were the best man for the job, and they were hired because of that. And then guess what? All 5 of those guys won Super Bowls. Pete Carroll, John Harbaugh, Belichick, Tomlin, Dungy. All Super Bowl coaches. All have their teams consistently as contenders year in and year out that are still in the league. At least with Carroll, Harbaugh, Belichick, and Tomlin. Right? Every year we have the Steelers, the Patriots, the Ravens, the Seahawks. Always in the mix. Always in the playoff hunt. So that's why I'm skeptical that these new Rooney rules, which now were expanded on Tuesday, so that 2 minority candidates have to be hired for every head coach opening. You have 1 minority or female candidate have to be interviewed for every coordinator, offensive and defensive coordinator position, and front office position. So I'm honestly skeptical that this will change anything, because guess what? We've seen in the past with the Rooney Rule, all of a sudden it's increased a little bit. Teams, if they don't want to hire minority and diverse coaches, aren't going to do so. It starts at the top with owners. If they're not open-minded, if they pigeonhole themselves to just hiring one sort of candidate or want this specific qualification, whether it's offensive coordinator, whether it's a quarterback coach, nothing's going to change. So until these owners really start, and again, it starts on the top, until these owners become more open-minded, start actually thinking outside the box, start willing to go down the path that's less traveled, I hate to say it, the lack of diversity in the coaching and in the front office ranks, it's not going to change. It's crappy to say, but it's not going to change because the NFL, if anything, doesn't promote open-mindedness, doesn't take a risk unless someone else doesn't have success. And these owners are so risk-averse, so they're not going to do it. So that's why I'm fortunately very skeptical that these rule changes could do anything because guess what? At the end of the day, everything I read came back to the same conclusion. You can't force owners to hire someone they don't want to hire. You can't force general managers to hire someone they don't want to hire. So they're set in their ways. If they have one sort of idea of a coach that they want leading their team, no matter what rule you put in, what rewards you give teams, unfortunately, nothing's going to change. And it's unfortunate to say, it's really bad for the game to say. But you need these owners, again, starting from the top, to be more open-minded, take more risk, and again, see the bigger picture, think outside of the box, than just trying to check so-and-so box. So I'm very skeptical that these new Rooney rules, again, trying to add to the already existing rules with more minority coaches interviewing for head coaching jobs, with more minority coaches interviewing for coordinator positions, I'm skeptical it's going to change. So I'm curious, any of these new rules they could help promote the lack of diversity in coaching in the front office? I hope so. I really do. But I just keep coming back to the fact that you can't force and push these owners to hire people they don't want to hire. And guess what? These owners, a lot of these same owners, have been in power for a while. And guess what? This issue of diversity has been around for a while. So when you implement the Rooney Rule back in 2003, and 17 years later, not much has changed, do you expect the same group of ownership to all of a sudden change their ways, wake up one day and be like, wow, you know what? The lack of diversity is very concerning. We should really do something. No, they're going to hire who they want to hire. Teams that already are thinking outside the box are doing so. Like I said, the 49ers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially led by Bruce Arians, they're hiring the best people they can have for the job, no matter what their background, their gender, their race. So teams that want to think outside the box and hire diversity are already doing so. They don't need incentives. They don't need rules in order to do so. The rules are there for those who don't want to. And in the end, when you can't force these owners and these general managers to hire people they don't want to hire, nothing's going to change. So I'm pretty skeptical myself. I hope something could change, but at least right now, I can't think of anything unless it's legitimately ownership change that's going to help promote diversity in the coaching and front office